So in the last video, we looked at Omnigen 2 and what it can do. Look, I'll be real with you. It wasn't as good as we were hoping for. Don't get me wrong, it works great if you're using a high-end GPU or running it in the cloud. But even then, it takes forever to actually get things done. And we need to understand something here. If open source offline AI is ever going to be viable for everyday use, like for real practical workflows, it has to hit this sweet spot. A place where GPU usage and speed actually let you finish your projects on time without babysitting the thing for hours. So in today's video, I want us to take a look at its competition, Flux1 Dev Kontext. Spoiler alert, it's just better. Welcome back to Sneaky Robot. I had to make the Omnigen 2 video first because just saying something is better without showing you what it's actually better than doesn't really make sense. And look, I know it's a logical fallacy to assume that a new AI model is automatically more accurate or powerful just because it's newer, but in this case, Kontext actually is better. Also, quick heads up, I want to apologize in advance because I might explain something in one section and then again in another, and that's just because of how much Kontext can do. It's kind of hard not to loop back sometimes. So, what we're doing today is this. We're going to go through the full process. Everything from installing Kontext, checking how to prompt for Kontext by looking at some use cases, and we're also going to test if we can double or even triple the speed of Flux Kontext. And I want to look at both general use cases and real-world ones. Now, when I say real-world, I mean, how can you use this tool to replace a bunch of tools you're probably paying for right now? That kind of real. Not that it really matters though, because the license for Flux1 Kontext isn't actually for commercial use, and honestly, I get it. AI sites have been making bank off of Flux Dev, and I kinda saw this move coming, but for non-commercial stuff, you can still use it as much as you want. Alright, here's how we're gonna roll today. These are the workflows we're using, and what I really want us to do is test each of the nodes I'm adding to see if they actually speed up the workflow. Let's start with installation. Normally, I save this for last, but for this one, I want you to follow along step by step. You can always skip to the next section using the timestamps if you're already comfortable with what I'm covering. Okay, so installing this is super simple, and that's because it's natively supported in ComfyUI. Don't forget to update Comfy. Now before you do that, back it up. And when I say backup, I mean this specifically. Copy the Python embedded folder and also the custom nodes folder. Paste those somewhere safe. That way, if the update goes sideways or something gets messed up, you can just delete the updated versions of Python embedded and custom nodes and replace them with your backups. Or, if you're like me, maybe just have 3 instances of ComfyUI installed. One's the desktop version and the other 2 are portable. One's my main install, the other's for testing. All I did was symlink the model folder across all 3 installs so they share it. To update ComfyUI, open the manager and click on Update ComfyUI or navigate to where you've installed ComfyUI and open the update folder. Inside there, click on Update ComfyUI.bat, wait for it to finish updating and then restart Comfy. Alright, so once you've got Comfy updated, the first thing you need to do is download the models. And here's the beauty of it. If you already have Flux Dev installed, the only model you need to download is the Flux1 Dev Kontext model. But let's just do all of them from the top to make sure we're on the same page. First up, the main model. The links are on the sneakyrobot.org workflow page. I'm downloading both the FP8 version and the Q4 quantized version. Once those are downloaded, place them in your models diffusion folder. You don't need to put the gguf models in the unet folder. What I did is create a new folder inside the diffusion folder called Flux Kontext and dropped both of them in there. Next, if you don't already have it, download the clip-L model. Put it in the model's text encoders folder. I personally use the VitL improved model. It's better, but still pretty great for its size. Both versions are available. After that, you'll need the T5 model. There's a safe tensors version and a quantized version available. I grabbed both the FP8 and Q4 versions. Download whichever one you want, or both, and also place them in the model's text encoders folder. And while you're at it, if you've got other clip models sitting in a separate clip folder, just go ahead and move all of them into the text encoders folder. The last model is the VAE model. You can either download the ae.safetensors file or the pigflux gguf model, or both. I grabbed both. Put them in the models VAE folder, and that's basically it. It's your typical Flux setup, just minus the original Flux model. Now, after all that's set up, drop the workflow file into your ComfyUI workspace. You're almost done. If you see any nodes missing when you open it, just open the manager, click on Install Missing Nodes, select the ones it shows, and hit Install. Wait for everything to finish installing, then restart ComfyUI. That's it for the install section. Now, the workflow itself might look a little intimidating at first, but it's not. It really isn't. I've set up 5 different workflows. They're all just variations of the basic ComfyUI workflow. 2 include some optimizations to help speed things up. The first versions, both the normal and optimized ones, are set up as all-in-one workflows. You'll see switches that let you enable or disable different paths depending on what you want to run. So for example, if you're using gguf models, you set the model type switch to 1. That tells the workflow to use the quantized models you loaded. If you're using safe tensors, flick the switch to 2, and now it's using those instead. Same goes for image size. There's a select image size switch. Set it to 1 if you want to use the input image or images size, or set it to 2 for a custom image size. I'm using the Flux resolution calculator for custom sizes. Now, why use a custom size? Because Kontext defines its own optimal image size. If you're using input size to determine output, it's okay if you've got just one image as input. But if you're using 2 images, and they're both widescreen, that can really mess up your output. So that's why I'd recommend using a custom image size, especially if you're trying to work with a specific aspect ratio. For example, you're working on a landscape image, but your reference image is portrait. It just gives you more control, more predictability. Alright, so right next to the image size switch, you're going to see Enable Second Image Switch. If you flick that to yes, it basically lets you use 2 images in Flux Kontext. Super useful if you're doing style transfers or just trying to blend 2 concepts together. There's one more thing I added to the workflow that I think you're really gonna like, and that's a prompt generator. Because honestly, not everybody has the time or the brain juice to come up with the perfect prompt every single time they use Kontext. So I've got a switch called Prompt Type. Setting it to 1 means you're writing your own prompt. Setting it to 2 switches over to the LLM, the language model that can write the prompt for you. I've got mine defaulted to 2 because sometimes I just don't want to think about wording things perfectly. But if I've got time and know what I want, I'll switch it back to 1 and write my own. Let me walk you through how these 2 work. Let's start with the own prompt setting. I'm not going to be using prompt stylers here on purpose. And I know some people love them, but hear me out, stylers are random. Sometimes they hit gold, and sometimes they just throw you a bunch of artistic gibberish that makes no sense. And what I mean by bad images is not that they're low quality, matter of fact, they might even look good, but it's that they're not always what you asked for. It's like asking for a pancake and getting a croissant. Cool, but not the same thing. Most prompt stylers were made for SDXL, and they do not play nice with Flux Kontext. Flux Kontext is like a scalpel, not a roulette wheel. You've got to treat it with more precision. Stylers are great if you're feeling experimental, but if you've got a specific outcome in mind, that's a problem. Also, super important, Flux Kontext works best with prompts that are under 512 tokens. So don't treat your prompt like you would with Flux Dev. Short version, keep it clear, keep it intentional. Now let's talk about the LLM side of this. This is honestly where this whole workflow shines. I'm using the if LLM node because it lets me use either Llama or API-based models, and it's super smooth switching between them. But, and this is kind of annoying, if you click away to another tab and then come back to the tab with the node, sometimes it randomly resets your settings. I've seen it try to pair Gemini with a Qwen model for absolutely no reason. So just double check your settings before running anything or you'll get hit with a random error. Anyway, I'm using Gemini 2.0 Flash Experimental. It's the quickest way I've found to analyze an image, or even 2 images, and get a really spot-on, usable prompt. So let me show you how this actually works before I show you how to get the API key. The system prompt I'm using is very intentional. It tells the LLM to only make changes the user asks for and to leave everything else alone. It also makes sure that every prompt it spits out follows the same rules for prompting Flux context, same structure, same token limit, all of that. Basically, it knows the playground it's working in. Here's a little example. I'm using a line drawing of a skeleton sitting at a table. In the user prompt field, I type in, transform into a realistic image. Simple, right? And here's the prompt it gives me, transform the drawing into a realistic image while maintaining the same composition, subject placements, camera angle, framing, and perspective. Maintain the skeleton figure with a cigarette, the white t-shirt with flow chill text, the bottle with VODK text, the spilled liquid, the gun, the text back to the drawing board, prod CUDM, and parental advisory explicit content in the same locations and general font styles. And it gives me this super clean, realistic version of that exact drawing. And I'm doing this with the Q3 version of Flux Kontext, which is one of the lower quality versions on purpose, just to show you how well it still performs. And when you look at the prompt it gives you, it's clean, it's detailed, it's reproducible. So, how do you get the Gemini API to work in the If LLM node? Alright, click the link I dropped in the description. It'll take you to Google's AI Studio. Once you're there, log in with your Google account. Then hit Get API Key and follow that by clicking Create API Key. Copy the key you just created. Now go back to ComfyUI and in the If LLM node, paste that API key into the external API key field. That's it, you're done. After that, just make sure you've selected Gemini as the provider. Then choose the Gemini 2 experimental model as the actual model you're using. You can also use Ollama if your system can handle running that locally alongside Flux Kontext. It really just depends on your setup. Now in the conditioning section of the workflow, I've bundled a few switches. There's the own prompt, the reference latent, Flux guidance, conditioning 0 out, K sampler, the Flux model sampling node, and I've even added the mag cache node to speed things up. But just a heads up, mag cache only works with the safe tensors model. It doesn't work with GGUF. And there's one more trick I'm using to cut down the inference time. It's the Turbo LoRa, and it actually works surprisingly well. The last part of the workflow is pretty straightforward. You've got your VAE decode and your save nodes. And then there's all the other workflows for each model type. There's a GGUF workflow, a safe tensors workflow, and then a safe tensors workflow that uses mag cache. These are there just in case you don't want to use the all-in-one version. But from this point on, I'm sticking with the all-in-one workflow because it's just easier to manage. Here's how I usually work through it. First, I decide if I want to use a custom image size or just let Flux Kontext pick the size for me. Then I ask, am I using one image or two? After that, which model am I running? Am I going with GGUF or safe tensors? And finally, am I writing my own prompt or letting the LLM help me out? And honestly, that's it. From here, it's just uploading your image and giving it a prompt. And one more thing I have to mention. You can totally use natural language to tell the LLM what you want. Just plain old English. Here's an example. I'm going to drop in another line drawing, and this time in the prompt field, I'm just going to say, change the image into anime in the style of Studio Ghibli. That's it. No fancy keywords. I'm going to use the Turbo LoRa and make sure the steps are at 8. The LLM gives me the following prompt. Convert the image to anime in the style of Studio Ghibli while maintaining the original composition, character poses, camera angle, framing, perspective, and the general layout of the figures and background. And the result? The image looks amazing. Like absolutely nailed everything, and only with 8 steps. So there's basically an infinite number of things you can do with this model. I mean, I have over 200 different use cases logged at this point. And no, I'm not going to be able to go through all of them here, unless we want this to turn into a full-blown documentary. But let's say maybe we hit about 20 today. And I'll try to move through them fast enough that you don't fall asleep on your keyboard. Let's start with iterative editing, because this right here, it's one of Kontext's biggest strengths. So what does that actually mean? Iterative editing is when you build your image in layers. You give one instruction, get a result, then add another instruction on top of that result, and you just keep going, like stacking edits. And Kontext handles this really well. The latency is low, the quality holds up, and the style stays consistent across changes. Alright, for this example, I'm starting with a super simple black and white line drawing. It's just a classic car, no background, really clean. The first prompt I'm typing in is, colorize this image. Turn the car to a vintage red color. Now, once that process finishes, here's what you do next. You go into the load image node and you hit refresh. What that does is pull the output image from the last step right back in as your new input. That's how you start the next step in the chain. Then, the next prompt I type is, add a serene countryside road as the background. Same thing. Once the output is ready, I go back, hit refresh again to bring that updated image in, and then I type, add a small fluffy white dog in the passenger seat. It's honestly that easy. You just keep clicking refresh to load your updated output back in, and you keep building on it, step by step, prompt by prompt, and that's the whole iterative process. Now let's talk about local and precise object modification. Kontext really shines when you want to change just one thing without messing up the rest of the image. Here's what I'm working with. It's a wide shot of a super busy outdoor market. Lots of stalls, people everywhere, and right in the foreground there's a bright yellow fruit stand. The prompt I'm using is, change the yellow fruit stand to a vibrant blue color while keeping all the fruits on it the same. And that's the magic. You're targeting one object, just the fruit stand, and everything else stays exactly as it is. That kind of precision? It applies to more than just color. You can replace objects, add new ones, or remove distractions, all without touching the rest of the scene. Alright, switching gears for a sec, let's talk about maintaining character identity across different environments. This is a big deal when you want the same person to show up in multiple scenes and still look like themselves. So I'm starting with this photorealistic portrait of an older woman. She's got this beautiful curly hairstyle and these really kind eyes, and she's looking straight at the camera. Here's the prompt. Place this woman in a bustling futuristic city street at night, illuminated by neon lights, while preserving her exact facial features, hairstyle, and expression. And this is what we get. Not bad for 8 steps. Let's go a little deeper with that. You can also change a character's appearance without losing who they are. So now I've got a new image. It's a young man, short brown hair, plain grey t-shirt, and he's got this kind of serious expression. The prompt is, change his hair color to bright blue and add a pair of sleek, modern sunglasses. Even though I didn't say what to preserve, Kontext still got the assignment. His expression? Still serious. His features? Still the same, just with bold blue hair and shades. Okay. Next use case. You can change a character's position or activity inside the same scene. Let's say we've got a woman standing by a window, just casually looking outside. I want to change that. So the prompt I'm using is, change her position so she is sitting on a cozy armchair, reading a book, maintaining her identity and the window view. She goes from standing to sitting with a whole new vibe, and the model does it cleanly. Her features stay the same, the window's still there, although it looks like it's another part of the same room. It's just a new pose, a new moment. Alright, now we're moving into specific character transformations. And for fun, let's get weird. I've got this photo of a grizzly bear. It's just standing in a forest clearing, pretty standard. The prompt is, change this bear to wear cargo pants while sitting on a log in the woods, biting into a sandwich beside a beautiful alpine lake. I didn't tell it to preserve anything, because in this case, I actually want the bear to fully transform. I want the scene to change, the posture to change. The result? Amazing. Let's go into changing the background or environment. You can literally pick up your subject and drop them into a brand new setting. Jungle, city, underwater, outer space, whatever you want. So here I've got an image of a lone person standing in a huge empty desert. Blue sky, nothing else going on. The prompt is, change the background to a lush, dense jungle with exotic plants and dappled sunlight, keeping the person in the exact same position and pose. Note how I just said person, since it's only one person. If there was more than one, I would have described it a bit better, but then again, all I am doing is changing the background, which means it wouldn't matter at the end of the day. The background transforms, but it brought the person closer. And it's still kind of the same person. This is the perfect time to talk about image quality. If your image quality is low or the subject is a bit far from the viewport, just like in this image, then it's best to actually describe the subject so the context can have a clue as to what it's working with. Up next, changing the time, season, or weather. Same image, same layout. You're just shifting the atmosphere. I'm using this beautiful park scene in the fall. Colorful leaves everywhere, really warm and cozy lighting. Prompt is, change the weather to a snowy winter day with everything covered in fresh snow, maintaining the park layout. Just like that, fall becomes winter. The leaves, gone, replaced by snow. The lighting shifts, the mood changes, but the park itself is still recognizable. It's honestly kind of cinematic. So we're almost at the end, but I have to mention style transfer and preservation. Kontext can completely reimagine your image in a new style. Oil painting, anime, Studio Ghibli, Bauhaus. Whatever vibe you want. Here's the setup. I've got a high-res photo of a serene lake surrounded by mountains. Crystal clear sky. The prompt is, transform this image into an oil painting with visible brush strokes, thick paint texture, and rich color depth. It doesn't just throw on a filter. It actually builds the texture, the brush strokes. It feels like paint. And the styles you can choose? Endless. You can turn a digital photo into an anime frame, or even a claymation scene. Want a pencil sketch? Sure. Cubist abstraction? Done. The only real limit is your imagination. You can even go the other way. Take a painting and turn it into a photorealistic image. Sometimes it works best with an in-between line art step, just to help the transition. You can restore and colorize old photos too. Remove scratches, update the style, breathe new life into them. Alright, last big one before I just start rapid-firing examples at you. Image text editing and manipulation. This one's pretty straightforward, but super powerful. So I've got a photo of this old-timey bakery storefront. It's got a sign above the door that reads, Vesuvio Bakery. The prompt is, replace Vesuvio Bakery with Sneaky Robot Bakeries on the sign, maintaining the same font style and sign aesthetic. And it nails it. The font still looks old school, but the text is updated, clean and perfectly placed. You know what? Let's just do all 21 use cases. Why not? That way, we're covering all the bases. Okay, so next up are the business and marketing use cases. This is where things get super practical. Flux1 Dev Kontext actually has some really powerful features for businesses. Think product mockups, ads, virtual staging, all that good stuff. For this one, I'm starting with a plain white t-shirt, laid flat. That's the input image. And then I'm using this prompt. Generate a mock-up of this t-shirt worn by a smiling virtual model standing against a clean, minimal background. The t-shirt should have a small SR logo on the chest. And the image looks amazing. You can create instant mock-ups like that for products. And not just t-shirts. You can do mugs, posters, anything really. It's like having a product photography studio on your laptop. You can virtually stage empty rooms, generate entire e-commerce ads from just one product photo. You can even perform product placement. For example, generate an image of someone holding your product, or enable fashion try-ons by swapping out someone's outfit with clothing from a reference image. Here's an example of a fashion try-on. I've loaded an image of a model standing against a wall and an image of a red evening dress with the following prompt. Change the woman's clothing to the red evening dress while maintaining her pose, expression, hair, the pink background, and her original skin tone. Keep the same lighting, camera angle, framing, and perspective. And the output is the woman in the same pose but wearing the red dress. Composition control is use case number 12. And honestly, this is a huge deal if you're doing any kind of complex image transformations. What Flux1 Dev Kontext lets you do is maintain the subject placement, the camera angle, the perspective. It gives you real control over the visual layout. The image we're using here is a group of friends sitting around a campfire in a forest. And the prompt I'm using is change the background to a starry desert night, maintaining the exact same camera angle, the friends' positions relative to the campfire, and their scale and pose. Only replace the environment around them. It keeps the group of friends exactly where they are. It doesn't shift them around at all. That's the beauty of composition control. Your subjects stay locked in place, even as everything around them changes. Next, we've got multiple image input and combination. Now, let me be real with you. Multiple is kind of misleading. Once you go beyond 2 images, the results start getting a bit unpredictable. So stick with 2. For this one, I've got image 1, a woman hiking on a mountain trail. I'll activate image 2 and add a man cycling on a city street. The prompt is, combine the woman with a black cap and the man in a white shirt and tie into one scene where they are hiking side by side on a scenic mountain trail while maintaining their facial features, poses, and clothing, and everything else should stay as is. Now, remember I said, do these changes in steps and then improve on it. This would be the first step for me, getting them together in the same image. And in the next step, I'd probably remove the bike and then dress the man a bit sporty and so on until I get exactly what I want. You can clearly see the mutations in the image, and I believe this is because I'm using only 8 steps with the Turbo LoRa. Now here's one of my absolute favorite use cases. Consistent characters in storytelling. You can create the same character across totally different settings, and the model will keep their look consistent. So if you're doing narrative projects, animation, visual novels, whatever, this is for you. I've got an image of this animated fox character. For the first prompt, I'm using, show this fox character exploring an ancient, overgrown temple ruin. And it does. I'll click refresh on the input to bring that generated image back into the input node. Then I run a second prompt. Show the fox character navigating a bustling futuristic marketplace, keeping his unique features consistent. He still looks like our fox. Same style, same vibe, but now he's in a completely new environment. This one feature alone makes this model one of the most valuable tools I've used. Use case 15 is creating character sheets or 3D asset references. Basically, if you've got a character, you can generate them from multiple angles, front, side, back, all from one image. It's perfect for building out game assets or animation sheets. So I'm starting with an image of a stylized superhero character in a static front pose. And the prompt I'm using is, create a character turnaround sheet showing this superhero from the front, side, and back views on a plain gray background. It gives me a full turnaround sheet. Super helpful for when you need consistency in different views. Notice how the aspect ratio stays the same as the input. This is exactly where the custom size switch comes into play. I'm going to change the image size switch to 2 for custom size, and then change the aspect ratio to cinematic view, and leave the megapixels at 0.5 and run the same prompt again. See how it changed to a vertical orientation. You don't always have to follow the input image's aspect ratio or size when you are using Flux Kontext. You can let your project drive the output. Okay, so next up is outpainting. And no, you don't need a separate model for this. Flux1 Dev Kontext has it built in. Outpainting just means expanding your image beyond its original borders. I've got an image that shows only the top half of a tall lighthouse. And the prompt I'm using is, make this image taller, revealing the full lighthouse, the base of the cliff, and waves crashing below, maintaining the original style and lighting. And it expands the image perfectly. The next thing isn't technically a use case, it's more of a workflow enhancement. These are visual cues for editing. You can guide the model using visual markers. Things like semi-transparent masks or red boxes to tell it exactly where to make a change. Let me give you 2 examples. The first one is pretty straightforward. It's a painting of an empty picture frame on a wall. The prompt is, add a colorful abstract painting inside the empty frame. Now the empty frame itself acts like a cue. The model knows this is the part that needs editing. Now, in some cases, the cue won't be obvious, so you've got to add it yourself. For this one, I'm using an image of a Viking holding 2 axes. I'll right-click on the Load Image node, scroll up and select Open in Photopea. You'll need to have the Photopea node installed first. Then I'll draw a red rectangle around one of the axes. And here's the prompt I'll use. Add a lightsaber to the hand in the red rectangle. That's all I have to say, because the model focuses only on the red rectangle. It won't touch anything else in the image. Okay, so it gave me a double lightsaber. Again, I'm only using 8 steps with the Q3 quantized version. You can also use semi-transparent masks instead of a red box. Either way, this gives you a super precise way to make edits. Alright, now let's talk comics. You can generate comic panels and tell visual stories using Flux1 Dev Kontext. It lets you keep your character consistent, move them through different settings, and build out entire sequences. I've got a stylized drawing of a superhero character. The first prompt is, create a comic panel where the superhero is flying over a city with a thought bubble above his head saying, "Justice awaits." The image looks good. It has some issues, but it's still a decent image. Okay, final one for today, and by final, I mean final in this video, because let's be real, Kontext has endless use cases. This one is image upscaling and post-processing. So technically, this isn't core editing, but it's super helpful. I'm starting with a slightly lower res image of a detailed landscape. The prompt I'm using is, enhance the quality of this landscape, making it sharp and Ultra HD. Now, this doesn't work like a traditional upscaler. It's not just resizing pixels. What it's doing is regenerating the image with better clarity and more visible detail. You can even call it creative upscaling, but don't skip a proper upscaler if you need clean results at larger sizes. So what do I think of Flux1 Dev Kontext? It's way better than what I thought it would be. Just think about it. I did the whole video with a Q3 version with only 8 steps using the Turbo LoRa on a 8GB GPU. It's truly amazing. The sweet spot is 16GB. This will allow you to use the FP8 version or the Q8 version. One thing that's very important: do not rush the editing process. Do it in iterations. The cons of this model is it's not free for commercial use, but that's to be expected. The license is a bit understandable, just a bit. Anyway, try it out, you will not be disappointed. If this walkthrough helped you out, consider supporting Sneaky Robot. You can like this video, subscribe for more AI deep dives, or check out my Patreon, which, by the way, is totally free. You can also buy me a coffee, or stop by the Sneaky Robot website just to say hi. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.